how can a merchant understand if using AR is giving them any return in time and money, of course?
Today, the bottom line for us is also driven by how much conversion can we eventually drive for a merchant. And what we try to look at is as a most important metric is that for every dollar spent by a merchant today in terms of acquiring an end consumer or bringing them into the flow of their store, how much additional revenues can we generate? And by additional, I mean over and above the traditional 2D flow, which is already there. Because if that uplift is there, then the need or the sensibility of integrating 3D is obvious after that.
Hello, everybody. How are you? This is Diego Praderi, and you're watching The Link, eCommerce Connections. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about a very interesting topic. We're going to be talking about augmented reality for e-commerce. And today, to join us in this conversation, we're going to be talking with Gaurav Baid. He's the co-founder and CPO of Avataar. Hello, Gaurav. How are you?
Hi, Diego, and hello, everyone, to the listeners across the world. It's entirely my pleasure to be part of your show today. Thank you for having me.
No, it's a pleasure to have you, Gaurav. So, Gaurav, as you might know already, we like to start our episode at The Link, knowing a little bit more about who we're speaking with, right? So we would love to know about who's Gaurav Baid and what was your journey from being or doing whatever you were doing to actually started the Avataar company that you're providing solutions for AR and 3D for e-commerce. So what was your journey?
Sure. To start off, as a quick backdrop on me, Diego, as you mentioned, I'm one of the founders at Avataar and I play the role of Chief Product Officer, which makes me the product thinker in the mix of things. But before I double click on Avataar, let me start with my Avataar prior to Avataar, where I was, in the finance domain, but focused on the consumer tech space. So it's been almost 12 odd years for me in the consumer tech space that I've been working with giants in this space and trying to get various solutions for the end consumers. So that's where the journey for me started. From the initial years where I was through the learning grounds of understanding the domain, it was around 7+ years back when we started Avataar. And when we started, Diego, we started with the vision of bringing spatial depth to visual discovery experiences. What that basically means is that we are in the process of upgrading all existing 2D touchpoints that a brand has with its consumers to life-size interactive 3D content. And when I say existing 2D touchpoints, I mean the images and videos that you see online today before making a purchase decision. We're in the process of replacing that with 3D using AR, VR, XR as different mediums. Now, of course, I'd like to touch a little bit upon the whole motivation behind the vision that I just explained. Because the obvious question comes in is that why is it even important? As we all know that we live in a 3D world. We interact with objects in a 3D space with spatial depth around us. Unfortunately, the digital consumption of the same content has been limited to 2D screens, like the laptop and mobile devices that we have. Whereas audio, which is around just 20% of the sensory perception, vis-a-vis visual being 60% of human sensory perception, audio has had the benefit of spatial depth for decades now, with the help of technologies like surround sound, noise cancellation. So we started out of that with the vision of bringing that spatial depth to visual discovery. And that's the journey that we have been on.
That's great. And let me go back a little bit. Why e-commerce? Because I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I suspect AR can be used in a plethora of different options and fields and verticals and stuff. But you chose e-commerce. You specifically chose e-commerce. What was your motivation? Because you said you were in finance. And what came first? The motivation of solving that 2D to 3D for whatever that was, or the motivation to help the e-commerce space help customers make their purchase? What came first?
Very important question, Diego. And honestly, they both came together. The reason being that when we started out on this journey of, as I mentioned, upgrading 2D to 3D, we took the most difficult puzzle in the mix. And AR, for that matter, was being used for social media engagement and filters and whatnot. It's back in the day, that's where the journey of AR started. When we looked at AR, what we wanted to do is to make it more of a utility than of a fad in the space. And the highest amount of utility comes with commerce, where an end consumer eventually goes on to put money behind what they are seeing while they are buying the product. So what we did is that we picked the most difficult puzzle in the mix and made sure that if we can solve for that pinnacle of the problem, then we will be able to solve for everything else. Like our platform is agnostic of the sector, whether it be e-commerce, gaming, or travel and entertainment, anything that we would want to empower today, we can do that. But we started with commerce because that helps us to focus on the most difficult problem from a consumer lens and thereby provide the highest amount of uplift. Having done that, the journey from there on becomes easier. And with the similar notion within commerce also, we picked some of the most difficult categories where the laws of physics are the most difficult one to solve in a AR VR space. So we took where different kind of surfaces, different fabrics, even body to cloth physics, and all the complex physics equation had to be solved. And we started again from the top of the pyramid from that perspective and came down in terms of solving the gravity of problems. That's how our journey has been.
That's great. Gaurav, so let's go again back to the beginning. There's lots of, like you said, fads and new buzzwords and acronyms, in this business, technology, commerce, marketing. And I would like to go to the very beginning, and if you can explain, what's the difference? First of all, what's AR? Explain it like I'm 6-year-old. What's AR? But also, what's the difference with VR? That I see many people use it interchangeably, but it's really not the case, right? They're very different. So I would like if you could explain it in very simple terms.
Definitely will give it my best shot, Diego. So AR, I would say, is the tool that brings in context in our online discovery process. What I mean by that is, e-commerce has been there for over 2 decades now. Since this advent of Web 2.0 era or the internet era, we have seen e-commerce companies coming up and being there. But unfortunately, in any of the markets globally, in any of these sectors globally, online commerce haven't been able to penetrate to a very large portion. That has always been because of that divide between offline and online that exists, where online is not able to provide the same experience as an offline store would. Now, what with AR we are trying to solve for the online commerce player, and I'll go to the physical part as well later. But to start off, where the journey for online commerce player is that we are trying to bring that context for an end consumer. Let's say you are on an online store looking at a couch which you need for your home. So you have to start visualizing that, okay, if I were to buy this gray colored couch, how will it go with my decor? How will it look in front of my white wall in the living room? Or how will it fit with the other aspects I have in my living space? With AR, you get the power to pick that couch, that gray colored couch, and place it in your living space and see how it looks and fits with everything else in that same environment that you have. So that's the power that augmented reality brings to the fore. Is the you can decide the context in which you will eventually use the product. It could be your living space, it could be your kitchen, it could be your bedroom, it could be anything else where you want to utilize that product. To the extent of even dropping a life-size car in your backyard or in your garage and see, how does it look? Just getting that feeling or that aha moment from a consumer lens that if I were to actually buy this product and have it in my backyard, how will this car look? Just sitting in front of my home or, in my garage. Now, where it differentiates from VR is that VR lacks in terms of providing that context driven by the consumer. It's more of a push to the consumer where a context or an environment, spatial environment has been pre-decided and the object is rendered in that environment. It could be a store, it could be a great looking home as well, that the merchant may have decided and built for, and the end consumer has to look at it. So it's more of a push marketing from the perspective we look at it, whereas AR is more of pull. I'm pulling the product in my
Okay.
own space and kind of being the protagonist of the journey as the consumer. I'm deciding what I want to do with this product, where I want to place it, how will it look, will I make the purchase decision basis that or not. So that differentiation between push and pull is where I see the
I like
differentiation
it.
of
And the
VR and
contextual
AR.
reality, right?
Yes,
I love it.
absolutely.
And Gaurav, that's a great explanation. And at the end of the day, it's about image processing, right? And something that we see a lot with our e-commerce clients is that whenever you are talking about images, 2D, 3D, whatever type of image we're talking, even GIFs or cinemagraphs, whatever that is, there's a component about performance, right? And that's widely known because you might have the best images ever, you might have the best AR ever, but if your page renders slowly, or if it doesn't perform, or if it gets stalled, or whatever, like you're losing the customer, you're losing the sale basically. And I would like to understand better, because I know that you've solved this and you are constantly solving and making it better and better and better. So how do you work around performance with such powerful product, right? Because you need a lot of processing power to process those AR images, right?
Absolutely, Diego. And I love the way how you switched from an explanation of AR from a 6-year-old to going straight into the tech in terms of image processing. So that was great. But yes,
It was a smart 6-year-old.
Yeah, but it's spot on, Diego, in terms of finding the core of the problem, because we have been solving for this right from day one, and that's where most of our patents also lie today. But image processing, the FPS of the render solution that you provide, and the loading time, all are very important aspects. We have worked with large scale players for whom even if it used to take 1 second extra, it would mean billions of dollars of revenues in terms of GMV loss for them. So we could not have even afforded that. So these were problems that we had to solve at the very beginning in terms of our journey. There were two key pillars, just for your context and for everyone's context, for in our journey. First was photorealism, which was creating a highly realistic rendition of the product that you're looking at. Second was compression, which is creating bandwidth friendly experiences for the end consumer. Now, double clicking on compression, which is part where we have solved and where our proprietary algorithms today are sitting to help an end consumer experience it in much better way. Because we started with mobile first approach, Diego, that kind of changed the game slightly for us. Erstwhile 3D has always been a desktop heavy, a desktop driven experience. And 3D has been there for over 4 decades, close to 5 decades today, in different fields, including movies and VFX. But when you start with mobile first, you have to work with the lower end Android devices as well, with lower end chipsets also included. And in most of the cases, GPUs are practically non-existent. Back in the day when we started, GPUs were not as strong as they are today. So we had to definitely solve for that. That's where our proprietary algorithms of topology preserved compression came into play, where what we do is that we are trying to preserve the rendition while taking out every aspect which is not needed for the consumer to interact with the 3D. And these are all our own rendering formats. So we don't follow the traditional mesh-based approaches in terms of showing the 3D products to the end consumer. But we have built our own solutions because the magnitude of problem was such that we couldn't have solved it by approaching it from what people have done in the past. So we had to take a completely different approach in terms of how can I get these heavy 3D files, which are usually built in that manner, to a lower end Android device or a lower end mobile device for a consumer who could be in a very poor network as well, and still give them a very seamless experience without the page load increasing, without the buffering becoming the lag for them. So that has been one key problem, and that's where all our the patents lie, in terms of solving that, in terms of how we will make sure that the compression is so effective that the consumer, no matter in what context they are, they would be able to see what we are trying to send their way.
Cool. And tell me something, Gaurav. So, how can a merchant understand if using AR is giving them any return, right? Is bringing any return to their business? Because at the end of the day, and we see it a lot. It's very difficult sometimes for merchants to understand. Like, there's an overwhelming amount of tools or strategies or tactics they can use. This will depend by different verticals. They might have different tools to use when they choose to show their products with AR, right? Like, where can they see the return in the investment, right? In time and money, of course.
The most important aspect here, because that's practically our North Star as well, from Avataar's lens, if I were to look at it, is that what is the ROI that we are delivering or the uplift that we are delivering for the merchant? Again, because we took commerce as the first sector, as I mentioned, in terms of solving the most difficult of the puzzles out there, today the bottom line for us is also driven by how much conversion can we eventually drive for a merchant. So when we have a partner on board, we are trying to ensure that when they implement 3D and AR from our platform onto for their end consumers, the objective should be that from the erstwhile 2D flow or the 2D experience that they had, and the kind of conversion for the same dollars that they would have spent in terms of getting or acquiring a customer and getting a return in the 2D flow, how much additional return can we generate in terms of sales conversion? So uplift in sales conversion is the bottom line. And what we try to look at is, as a most important metric, is that for every dollar spent by a merchant today in terms of acquiring an end consumer or bringing them into the flow of their store, how much additional revenues can we generate? And by additional, I mean over and above the traditional 2D flow, which is already there. Because if that uplift is there, then the need or the sensibility of integrating 3D is obvious after that, and which we have already seen. So just for context of everyone, across different players, we have even seen 250% uplift happening from the sales conversion stage, which is overall 350% sales happening from the erstwhile 100%. But at a minimum level also, we have seen 90% plus conversion uplift with life-size interactive 3D over a 2D image or a video.
Well, and video, you just, now that you mentioned video, like, one might assume that video is kind of the predecessor for AR in a way, or not for AR, but for showing products in a more contextual. The thing is that with video, the merchant chooses the context, right? So can you dig deeper on that? Like, what are other differences that other benefits that AR bring as opposed to video?
Yes, video, I would say, is more like a predecessor to VR experiences. Again, because they both fall into that push domain, where the context is set and the merchant pushes that context to the user. Of course, VR brings in the additional spatial depth and 3D interactivity. But specifically between AR and video, the push and the pull again comes back into the equation, Diego, for setting the context. In terms of more nuances, in terms of what AR or 3D brings over and above video, is of course the life size format. I can now start seeing how big that couch is. Would it actually fit? When I'm looking at a video, and their dimensions mentioned, I'll have to again start visualizing that, okay, do I have enough space? Or if I were to put this refrigerator next to my dishwasher, well, while opening the door, will it bang against something else? Will I have enough space in my hallway to take this through, and all of that? With 3D and AR, we solve for that problem. that now you can put this life-size product in your environment and see how it fits, how it looks overall. Second is where we bring in interactivity, which allows you in two different aspects. One is by exploring variants of the product. Now, if you put that gray colored couch, as I was referring to earlier, but you didn't like the color. So without having to go back to a different product, different page, within that camera experience, you can start changing colors of that product, which you can't do in a video. Video is shot with one particular product and you have to go through that whole experience. In AR and 3D, as I said, consumer is the protagonist. Gets to decide that which color they want to look at. So if they don't like the gray one, they can pull up a white one, a blue one, a brown one, whatever they want, and see how it fits into their environment and if it goes with the decor. And the second part of interactivity is where we start showing a little bit about the features and capability of the product. Let's say if it's a recliner, we can show the recliner opening up and giving the consumer a feel that when it's up, when the leg portion is up, how does it look? How does it fit in your environment? Or when you open up a refrigerator, how much of content can you fit inside?
Yeah.
Similarly for cupboards or bed storage areas and whatnot. So that interactivity kind of extends and also help consumer understand some of the key features of the product. So as a merchant, you would be able to integrate certain callouts and features that, okay, these are the important aspects of my product. And when the consumer is exploring this part of the experience, I want them to understand that, okay, my refrigerator has this additional feature of 3D cooling, which other competitors may not have at this stage. So those kind of integrations are also possible where 3D and AR brings a more immersive experience vis-a-vis a video.
That's great, Gaurav. And while you were saying that, I was also thinking about another aspect that AR solves, and I want your opinion on this, and it's about returns, right? Because I need to buy a couch, right? And I don't have AR, right? There's a store that doesn't have this AR capability, and I buy it, and I didn't take the measures right, but I need to ship it back to you. Maybe not even change it, maybe even cancel a refund, right? Ask for a refund. So would it be fair to say that AR helps reduce those returns?
By a very big margin, Diego.
Okay.
To set the context again, even when you look at returns, fit has been the biggest problem in terms of consumer returning the product. It has been the biggest reason for why we send products back because it didn't fit my space. It didn't fit me when I was like trying that shoe on, and it wasn't the right size that fits me and things like those. Where with AR, we have seen return rates go down by as high as 40% for merchants. So what we are saving for the merchant is those additional logistic costs, and from an end consumer perspective, also that hassle of sending the product back, or that loss of delight in terms of getting a product but not being able to use it immediately, because now you'll have to wait for the new variant to come in. So yes, return has been one key area that we have solved with AR, and we are seeing that panning across the ecosystem, where as high as 40% savings have now been delivered to merchants from what they were spending or they were losing, more specifically, for the high return rates in the system.
And Gaurav, what's the most non-obvious client that you have? Because if I have to imagine, I would definitely think about home decor, furniture, maybe wearables, right? But can you talk about, like, do you have any other client that maybe use it for different things that you might not have thought about on the beginning?
No, absolutely, Diego. And this is one client which kind of took us into a completely new domain. As I have alluded to earlier, when I was referring that, let me talk about digital first and I'll come to the physical part later, because we started with digital as the focus in terms of the online commerce. But today we are more of a phygital or an omni-channel solution where we help both digital and physical players. But it started with one of our partners in the consumer electronics space who built an experience on our platform for their countrywide stores. And what it
For the what,
actually
sorry?
solved for their countrywide stores, for all their retail outlets across the country. And what it was actually solving for is what it was solving for in-store product demos assisted by a salesperson. So in the post-pandemic world, where even finding enough experts in the store has been a challenge for retail outlets, we kind of built an experience for them where store walk-ins could get enhanced value about the product, about what the product can solve for them by using our AR experience. So traditionally, when you think of AR, you would think of consumers sitting in their home on their couch, like lying down on the couch and trying out an AR experience. This kind of opened up a new spectrum for us altogether when we started integrating into stores. And from there, newer concepts came in where we are today solving real problems for a retail player. Like shelf space or floor space has been a challenge for all retail players since, as back in the history as we could think, because that's from day one that I cannot have enough of space if I want as a retail merchant. With AR, you can start building infinite aisles where when, let's say, you get to the end of a physical aisle, but there is an activation which will then, knowing the context of the category that you're in, will give you the entire virtual catalog of that merchant, which may not be housed in the retail outlet, maybe sitting back in their warehouse. But as a consumer, I can start looking at everything, interact with it, and make a purchase decision there itself, or creating experience zones within a retail space to start immersing into that. So all of this, like it's all started from that one activation that we did for one of our partners where they wanted store assisted demos, but then it kind of opened up the gates of the physical space for us. And today we have various activations panning out over there.
That's really interesting, Gaurav. Tell me, what's the process? Let's say I have a home decor store, right? And I'm not using AR. I'm just showing my 2D photos, right? So, and I want to start giving that spatial depth, that's contextual reality that you mentioned. Like, and I get in touch with you, right? What's the first step? How does the process go on going from 2D, totally 2D, to start having those images? And also, I would like to understand: do you make all of the products products at once? Do you select? Do you go on an agile way? How does it work?
We work with the principle of self-serve, Diego. So what we have ensured with our out-of-the-box solution is that we bring in a scalable, a seamless integration for the merchants to bring 3D and AR to the end consumer. We operate as a B2B2C company where our focus is not only with our partner brands, the middle B, but with also with the end consumer. When we like to always start from the consumer as to what kind of experience can we bring for them. Now, for that to happen and for our mission to democratize 3D to happen, we had to build a solution which can take care of both demand and supply in a seamless, scalable way. And now, what as a merchant we have enabled today is this out-of-the-box solution sitting on Shopify, on BigCommerce, and soon on other e-commerce enablement platforms as well. Is that you can just come, download our single-click app. It's a single-click integration, and with that, within the ecosystem, with no code required. There's no technical expertise required from a merchant's end, but go live with 3D and AR experiences on your product pages by replacing the 2D content over there. So this is
so we can be one at a time. So if it is self-service, I can choose, okay, let's start with this product and see how it goes. So I render a couch, and then if it goes well, I go for a table. Like that's correct.
Yes, the merchant has complete flexibility, and that, let's say if they have a product catalog of 100 SKUs, which ones they want to build and take onto the consumer side. But the demand side is with that single click integration. Now for the supply, where I'll also double click on the SKU side, is we have this neural radiance field enabled platform, an AI and computer vision platform that we have built over our journey, which can take the existing images or a quick video of a product and create a life-size 3D in matter of minutes. Erstwhile what used to take days and sometimes weeks for an 3D artist to build a model is now it's matter of 20 to 30 minutes in a fully automated solution on our
So wait,
platform.
so you're telling me, and excuse me if I misunderstood, but you're telling me that if I have a video already of the, I don't know, the couch, like a 360 video of the couch, I can turn that into an AR asset, like
Yes,
myself. Okay, that's interesting.
absolutely. That's the self-serve part, and that's where the scalability also comes in, Diego. That as a merchant now, I don't have to rely on someone, or even for to rely on Avataar for that matter, to create 3D assets for me. What we are enabling is you become your own master. You decide which products you want, one, 10, 100, or thousands. I mean, the platform can support all of that. So it is very much in that agile fashion as you were referring to, that you decide which ones you want to convert in 3D today, start seeing the uplift, and then make the decision of converting the entire catalog or not. But with our platform, both for supply and demand, it's a self-serve solution. It sits on these e-commerce enablement platforms, a single-click app which will allow you to go live, let's say in matter of minutes or in just matter of couple of hours for your end consumer to start seeing 3D on the product pages.
And what are the minimum requirements for an image to work in your platform?
So Nerf as a tech has generative capabilities as well, Diego, which means that even if you were to give me a single image, a one-sided image of a product, Nerf as a tech can generate the backside as well. Let's say if it's just a frontal shot which it has. What we don't like to do, though, given the commerce context, is generate reality. So what we need
Okay.
bare minimum from the merchant is images from all the different angles of the product, whichever are critical, including sometimes even from the bottom angle, because if it's let's say a gaming chair with some systems underneath the chair which you need to look at. So we need all those angles to be provided so that we can create the product in the true form, in the true reality as it is. As a tech, we do have the capability that if there's even one image available, we'll create that couch for you.
But
But
the
we
more
don't
the
do that.
merrier.
Yeah, we need a bare minimum 3 to 4 images, which
Three to
kind of
four.
covers all different angles, or a quick 10-second odd video of a product that you just walk around the product without you having to think that, if I missed some angle or not. It's much easier to just walk around the product. It's in your warehouse, it's there, and just upload that video onto our platform and let the platform do its magic from there on.
Cool. And Gaurav, I'm curious about, like, where do you see this going, right? Because this has been moving really, really fast and in many different directions. Where do you see, and I want to understand, where do you see AR going in general, and where do you see Avatar? Like, where are you aiming to with Avatar?
Sure. I'll probably break it down into 3 stages, Diego. The first is the most near term one, the here and now thing that we are focused on. Today, 3D AR penetration is not even 1% of retail. If you look at the overall global categories, 3D and AR is not even powering up 1% of the consumer experiences. So the uplift that we have seen is only with less than a percentage of penetration in this
And
space.
why
So
is that? Do you know why is that?
there are 2 reasons for it, honestly. One is most of the retailers today, they don't have the tech expertise or the tech powerhouse in-house to kind of build for 3D and AR. So it's very complex for them. That's why we started with that single click out of the box solution to help for that. And second, as I kind of touched upon earlier, is that 3D has always been very costly. It takes days and weeks for an artist, so it runs into hundreds of dollars for any product to be built. So that ROI becomes difficult. If I have spent, let's say, $500 to build a 3D model, and I'm selling that product for 50 odd dollars, just to recover it from my margins, I may have to sell tens or hundreds of those to finally make sense out of implementing 3D. With us, it's just like it's a matter of few dollars that you can go live with 3D. So that's where it has been kind of restricting retailers to use 3D even after having seen the uplift with 3D. The uplifts have been there for us for now a couple of years to see across different sectors, and all the giants in this space, all the marketplaces that you see, they all have 3D today. There's not a
Yeah.
single marketplace which doesn't have 3D and AR enabled on their platform, but the penetration has been very low. So our near-term focus is to improve that number, get further and deeper with the merchants in terms of empowering 3D and AR for them, and thereby bringing some uplift for the end consumer as well. Because I, as a consumer, feel really good if I can, try that shoe onto myself before buying it, or place that couch or refrigerator in my space before I make a purchase decision online. So that has been there. We have seen value being delivered for every player in the ecosystem, and that's what we are focused in the near term in terms of getting it out there. Second aspect, as we are again standing at the cusp of Metaverse era or Web 3.0 era, the idea is to uh, be plug and play across different platforms, variables, devices that a consumer could be using tomorrow. We know that AR glasses will soon start getting bundled with our mobile devices, and over the course of this decade, somewhere in the second half of the decade, who knows if a wearable even replaces a mobile device. Mobile device becomes the erstwhile landline of the generation, right?
What's
That
your opinion on that? How are you?
I truly see that happening, Diego. I may be proven wrong, but you know, 3D and AR keeping
Google
this,
Glasses weren't that
but they have
successful.
come
That
around
was
the
the
way.
first one, right?
That was the first one. Unfortunately, it was little ahead of its time, and
Yeah. Timing is
it
everything.
couldn't. Timing is everything in this space. Today, when you see all the different players in Apple, even Google have come back in terms of the AR space, and they're thinking about wearables with a very serious view. Apple is building its own glass. Snapchat, you have seen, they have come out with AR glasses. Uh, Over the course of this decade, Diego, I personally feel that this will de- come to fruition in a very significant way. Also, because our today's mobile devices are not meant for 3D experiences, especially more so for an AR experience. Now, you don't want to hold a mobile device at your chest height and walk around a product to see. You want these to be persistent around you. That's where an AR glass or a wearable comes in. I mean, changes the whole game, the whole experience for the consumer, because it makes it immersive. Now, while sitting where I am without having to do any additional effort, I could start seeing products in my space, which a mobile device today doesn't allow me to do. And the spatial depth becomes more obvious for me with that whole my physical space being overlaid with virtual experiences. So that's where AR glasses or wearables kind of trump over today's mobile device, and I see that definitely panning out. So our focus is definitely to be future ready from that perspective. Today we are already plug and play with every variable which is there, but kind of building onto that for consumer experiences. It's not just about building a prototype that okay this works. It's more about delivering business value from there on. That if the shift in consumer behavior is happening from a 2D screen of mobile device to a 3D spatial environment of a wearable, how do we make that transition happen for 3D and AR as well in terms of our platform? So that would be the second focus for us. And the third is bringing in standards in the industry, Diego, which doesn't exist today. When you talk about web, there's an HTML standard. When you talk about 2D images, there's a JPEG, there's a PNG standard, which everyone can refer to. For 3D, unfortunately, there hasn't been a consistent standard across all ecosystems, and people have been doing their own way or building their 3D experiences in their own way. This is where we have partnered with Kronos, and today we are one of the founding members of the Metaverse Forum, and the only startup I would say amongst the giants like Google, Adobe, and others in the mix, trying to solve for this. So, what our third focus would be in our roadmap is to get those 3D standards in the ecosystem. That's where we would be, as a consumer, I will get that interoperability from one ecosystem to the other, because now it's all the same file formats that we use.
And how do you, maybe this might sound a stupid question, but how do you set up the standards for such low penetration technology, right? And what I'm trying to think about is like when you start getting more and more penetration, of course those standards will change, right? And actually, I'm guessing that that's happening as we speak, right? So what are the basis of those standards? What do you actually need to focus on?
There are two of them which is actually not enabled till date any strong standard to be prevalent in the 3D domain. First is the rendering platform. What we see, Diego, is that across different ecosystems, there have been over the course of, I mean, as I mentioned, 3D has been there for decades. So over the span of these decades, we have seen different rendering solutions come to the fore, and each rendering solution being built in a way which is very unique to that platform, requiring inputs to be provided basis that platform, and not being able to support products or 3D built on any other platform. So that rendering layer is what is getting standardized as we speak, and it's already there. Like today, if you look across different rendering solution, whether it be on mobile or on desktop, there's a base layer which is there. Since the advent of WebGL, in by the end of 2019, I would say, there has been an industry shift towards adopting a common rendering solution, a common graphics library, basically for end consumers' perspective, which will support 3D or even AR for that matter. So that rendering solution has always been missing, which is now being today exists, and now it's being more stressed upon and utilized in this space. And the second has been the file formats itself, the content, and how it's being created. There have been very different ways, and because it's also very human driven, there comes in uniqueness in every approach of building a 3D model, what kind of additional information that you package in that product in terms of rendering platform to then kind of decode and provide it to the end consumer.
And
So
what's
that is also
yeah, no, sorry, continue.
what I was ending with is that is also what we are trying to now standardize. That what you kind of encapsulate within a 3D object is also would be a standard solution, that how a JPEG is packed or a HTML file is created. So these are standards which every developer knows, or every design artist knows. Similarly, 3D will also become standard. The content will become such standard that it's a common language that everyone is using.
And in AR and 3D, what would the differentiator, the unique value proposition would be once you get standardized? Where would the focus be? Creativity or performance?
Ease from a consumer lens is the biggest unlock which I see, Diego, today. So let's say I'm looking at the couch on a furniture retailer's platform and a refrigerator on a consumer electronics player's platform. But my need as a consumer is to renovate my home. I want to put all of these items together and see how they look, how they go in this space, which doesn't exist today. Even with
No.
3D and AR solution, it doesn't exist. I can see couches on the furniture platform
One
as
at
a
a time.
siloed experience,
Yeah.
and then the electronics in a different experience. I'm not able to combine them together. But when interoperability comes in from a consumer lens, especially in the ecosystem of different these metaverse worlds existent around us and persistent around us, they would be allowed to take one product. And that's whole the concept of NFTs is, right? Like you can buy the NFT from one, take it to a different world, a different ecosystem, and use the same NFT. And that's the interoperability which kind of plays out in the true sense of metaverse. So once we build for that, that's the unlock that I see for the end consumer, because now I can mix and match anything. I can even take my physical products into a virtual space, bring my virtual products from different worlds into my physical space, look at them all together, and do whatever I want to make the right decision for myself.
That's a very interesting point of view. So the metaverse, it's really guiding the industry, right? The AR industry right now, correct?
I would honestly not go to that extent in saying that, because on paper or in technical terms, Diego, yes, this should have been the right way. But the way metaverse has sort of become a hype as well, And the way people are looking at it, they're looking at more near-term solutions as to what I can get in terms of value from this whole hype which has been there, where it became the word of the year as well for 2021, and it's been there since the announcement, late last year. Uh, but people are not yet thinking of the long-term solutions on this front. And by people, I don't mean the entire ecosystem, but majority are not yet there. So over the course of this decade, I definitely see Metaverse getting there in the true sense of Metaverse, of what it should be. And then, yes, it definitely adds a lot more value for 3D and AR as well, and would be able to drive the next layer of persistent AR experiences for end consumers.
So what I understand also, Gaurav, is that you're seeing that one would be able to have all of their physical assets in their phone.
Oh, yes.
In a way, right?
So, absolutely, Diego. And that's what we call reverse AR as well. So our Nuvtech, what it does today is that, let's say instead of capturing that couch, which you were just walking around, you can actually capture your living space. I can capture my living room using the same tech by just taking a quick video of the whole space. What it allows me to do is that now carry my physical space as the virtual replica, as the virtual avatar of that, along with me wherever I go. So if I walk into a store tomorrow and I see a great couch there, but I can't now today physically transport this couch to my living space to see how will it fit over there and how it will look. But I have the luxury of carrying my physical space with me, where now I can see that couch and change the store environment to my living space environment and see how that physical couch will fit into my living space, and then make a decision. So reverse
That's
AR is a
amazing.
very strong trend, which is
It's
now
having your house in
evolving in
your
this space.
pocket, basically.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's amazing, Gaurav. Well, Gaurav, I guess there's lots of many other topics to touch upon AR, and I would love to maybe continue this conversation in other episodes. I really would like to talk more about the metaverse and that reverse AR that you just mentioned, but let's leave that for another episode. It has been an absolute pleasure sharing this episode with you. Thank you very much. Can you tell our audience where they can find you, where they can uh, start using Avatar?
Sure. First of all, the pleasure has been all mine, Diego. Again, thanks for having me on your show. And it was really insightful interacting with you. Great topics that we touched upon, and love the whole conversation flow. In terms of finding Avatar, yes, our website is there. We are Avatar with an additional A, which is avatar.ai. So any merchant looking to integrate, they can come onto our platform. We have all the different platform integrations provided there. And we are also live on Shopify and BigCommerce on their marketplaces. So if you are already a merchant of Shopify or BigCommerce, on your app marketplace, you can just search for Avatar. It will come up over there, and you can straight away integrate and start the journey from there on. Or if they were to come to our platform and if they have a different integration needed, they can drop in a query and our team will help them out.
Thank you very much, Gaurav. Okay, that's it for today's episode. Thank you very much for joining us. Be sure to subscribe to our channel, follow us on Spotify and all of our socials. We'll leave all of the relevant links in the description. And thank you very much. See you in the next episode. Bye-bye.